Okay, so I just learned this the other day, so I'm going to share it. Back in 2014, Rich Hill signed with the Angels, and he went on to make 2 appearances for them, where he only allowed 1 earned run. He faced 4 total batters after leading that second appearance with an injury. In that very short tenure with the Angels, he never recorded an out. So that means that since he did give up an earned run, his career Angels earned run average is infinity. So when you talk about players who have done it all, seen it all, Rich Hill should be at the top of that list. What a legend. Episode 29 of the Mets Weekly Podcast. Brutal honesty for 60 minutes, and it begins right now. All right, so as per usual, for those of you watching us on YouTube Premiere, Playback, or listening to us on one of our multiple available platforms, make sure to subscribe to the Mets Weekly channel, turn on those post notifications to never miss the premiere of the Mets Weekly Podcast every week, and also additional live streams regarding breaking news. Follow us on Twitter, TikTok, all of us individually. The links are in the description. So we are currently watching other teams who are actually good play baseball, as the Mets are sitting at home, and it's an early off season for us, as pretty much wait everything out while watching the playoffs.
Another year, another just sitting at home, chilling, not giving a shit about the playoffs because there's no rooting interest. They haven't been a competitive team since All-Star break, so it's been a while, and it's fun. It's kind of nice enjoying competitive baseball with not a care in the world of who wins, but, also nice seeing, a division where I'm about to talk a lot of shit, get bitched by the Phillies, but that's a maybe discussion for another time. But again, obviously we'd like to be in that dance because, it's fun being in there, but when you don't build a team proper, these are your results.
I find the most interesting part, you talk about the Phillies and just the National League in general. That's the league the Mets play in. Both your representatives National League Championship Series. Neither one of them won the division. And I feel like this is becoming more of a trend, it seems, the past few years, where the importance of division really isn't that much, where you're seeing these teams win the wild card. And what's so frustrating is that with the high payroll the Mets had, high expectations, these new rules that allow for all these playoff teams, they still couldn't get in. So it's like all of those things combined just make the offseason, or just how early their offseason begins, all the more frustrating.
So let's get into this week of New York Mets news, and we are going to start off with the biggest off-season topic that will be talked about possibly 700 times in the future. So going into the off-season, the top story in all of baseball will be focused on the game's best player. Shohei Ohtani will officially hit the free agent market, as we expect his market to be a one-of-a-kind sweepstakes. In the last few years, the 29-year-old two-way superstar has expressed a massive interest in being part of a playoff contender after missing the playoffs with the Angels for 6 consecutive seasons, yet to pitch or hit in the MLB postseason for his career. In most recent news, as Shohei Ohtani's free agency approaches, Ken Rosenthal reported that many industry sources believe that the bidding war is expected to come down to the Mets and the Dodgers, with other industry sources believing that Ohtani's interest to stay on the West Coast is massively overblown, as he is more open to signing with an East Coast team as well. Over the last few seasons, Ohtani has been a dominant force at the plate, posting a .964 OPS and 1,904 plate appearances with 228 extra base hits, 124 home runs, and accumulating a 15.5 Fangraphs wins above replacement. On the mound in the last 3 seasons, Ohtani has posted a 2.84 earned run average, a 3.23 fielding independent pitching, striking out 31.4% of batters, and a total Fangraphs wins above replacement of 10.9 across 428.1 innings pitched. Although Ohtani is the clear top fish on the market, the situation still comes with risk. As we all know, Ohtani suffered a torn UCL in his right elbow, leading him to undergo Tommy John surgery earlier this month, which will also keep him from taking the mound in 2024. Although he's expected to make a full recovery, his health definitely needs to be taken into consideration for any team pursuing him this offseason.
What a time to be alive right now, especially as a Mets fan. Who would have thought, 5-10 years ago that the Mets would be in a full-on bidding war for a guy who's being compared as the next Babe Ruth, this phenomenon, this one-of-a-kind player in Shohei Ohtani. So as a fan, that is very exciting. My biggest question is what is the Mets offseason mindset as far as if Ohtani is the top goal and you give him, just probably an obscene amount of money. If it's going to be a bidding war, because you're paying for an awesome pitcher and an awesome hitter all in one. So it's going to cost a lot. And we know that the Mets already have plenty of money committed to the roster, some of it coming off, but they still are paying those pieces of Verlander and Scherzer. So what I wonder is that, let's say you go all in, you get Ohtani, however much it costs, whatever, it's almost $50 million a year, I would think. Probably somewhere close to it when you're going hitter pitcher, because if Garrett Cole and all these guys, Max Scherzer, Verlander, they get low 40s million, you're getting hitter and pitcher. 50, not out the run possible, unless they go for something more years based, less AAV. We'll see how they maneuver it, but you're going to spend a lot of money on Ohtani if you're getting him on your team. But my thing is that, are the Mets going to take that approach again of being top heavy and not going for the quantity approach? Because if they do this, you have Ohtani, you have Senga, and then it's still a whole bunch of question marks as far as are these guys that you trust that are really solid pitchers that keep you in games every 5 days? You're counting on the, is Joey Lucchesi in the running? Is Tyler McGill in the running? You got to replace Carlos Carrasco. So, there still are going to be those other question marks in the rotation. Like we've talked about before, there's still question marks at third base and the corner outfield positions. So I wonder if, acquiring Ohtani, how do the Mets go about solving some of those other, kind of flaws that they have on their team? Because if you go all in on Ohtani and then you just kind of take a short-term approach and just fill in a little bit in some of these other areas, does that help them in the long run for the season? Just putting so many eggs in the Shohei Ohtani basket, that is an interesting approach. I understand why they would do it because of his talent, but there's a case to be made for both, in my opinion, because I just think this team needs so much. To me, they're not a Shohei Ohtani away from a World Series. He helps you, but I just think that there's so many other things that can be improved that it would be on the one downside is that they can't address those areas. They don't have, as much resources to allocate into those spots if they do acquire Ohtani.
Best player in baseball, yada, yada, all the great on the field, and especially for the Mets, if they were to sign him and things Cohen are looking for, off the field, money they can make, all the publicity, all the good stuff you can get signing a Shohei Ohtani. But then you get, again, like Frank said, and kind of the scary part, he's 29. This is going to be his second Tommy John surgery. All of next year, he's just a DH, which, yeah, the Mets desperately need a DH. We've been fucking saying that for 2 years. The damn rule became a rule for the National League getting it. But again, it's going to be some god over $450 million deal. Again, it's the eye-popping. It's kind of what they did. Go get the biggest star and see what happens. And then kind of like what Frank said, you still got the question at third. You still, who the hell's playing corner outfield? Are they still trusting in a 37-year-old? There's still, who else is pitching? And obviously, you bring Ohtani in, he doesn't solve your pitching issues next year. Maybe next year, but who knows even if he can get back on the mound, because, again, second straight Tommy John surgery. You start to see the results of a guy after the second Tommy John. It starts going downhill. Of course, he wants to do it, but how long are you, if he even gets back to that, how long do you have that two-way ability? So there are way too many warning flags to say, all right, plus it's going to be a 10-year deal, and he's 29, going to be 30 next year. And, you're not an Ohtani away. You're, again, bunch of pieces away from just getting back to the playoffs. Again, it's the sexy move. It would get all the, again, it'll be the move that makes the most money in Steve Cohen's pocket. He'll put that, $1 billion in, and he'll make $2.5 billion just because of the name, marketing, and all that. But this is not, again, I've said it with Carson. I've said he's going to the Dodgers, and it would be smart. Like we said, is he going to go to the West Coast, the East Coast? Now you're starting to see, he'll come to the East Coast. This is just the bargaining tactics on Ohtani's side. He needs the Mets in the conversation, can get him more money from the Dodgers. Or if the Giants or Padres, most likely it's going to be the Dodgers. But hell, maybe the Giants finally go out and get their superstar. Who the hell knows? They got Arson Judge last year. They were in the conversation. They struck out 0-4. Who knows? They can't try again and try to get maybe a Dodgers-Giants bidding war. But the Mets are going to be the team that gets used in every single free agent. You want the Mets in the discussion because that makes you more money. And you're seeing all the East Coast things. Now he's fine with it. He's not coming here. I would love it. I mean, if I got to eat crow and say, hey, Ohtani on December 17th is a Met, cool. I've said it's not happening. Everyone said he's going to be a Dodger, and especially after the embarrassment they just had, you thought they were going to be aggressive before. That embarrassment, they are going to do something stupid, and that might be the Ohtani plus this offseason. So, again, there's plenty of benefits. There's a lot of negatives. I'm staying away if it's me, but knowing Steve Cohen, he likes to make money. It's an easy money maker to put the money in an investment for off-the-field success and on the field, obviously. There's better options, especially for the direction that this team should be going in. If it's 2 to 3 years away, Ohtani at 33, before you're back to being a World Series contender, that doesn't sound, again, it's a fun decision. It's not the right move.
Here's how I look at it. I don't think you can look at Shohei Ohtani from a high horse and say, oh, I don't need him. I don't need him on my roster. I don't want him. Everybody wants a player like Shohei Ohtani on their roster, right? Everybody wants a Shohei Ohtani. This is a one-of-a-kind player that can contribute from both sides of the ball. Now, granted, he won't be doing one of those sides in 2024, which also dumbs down the factor. It is a big risk. It will 100% be a big risk. What I've been saying, possibly since the whole injury, maybe, what I've been thinking was, of course I want Shohei Ohtani, but I'm not prioritizing him. Overall, when I look at it, I understand that we probably have maybe a different vision as to what was going on at the trade deadline, where reportedly Epler was talking to Max Scherzer of not reloading and not going after the big top echelon free agents. Well, from that plan all the way to now, Epler's gone, so you don't know what approach they're actually going to take here. It's two things that the Mets definitely need to address: pitching and a DH, someone who actually could protect Pete Alonso. It's someone that I wouldn't be upset to have here. If they were to sign Shohei Ohtani, I 100% would be hyped. I would be ecstatic, obviously. But I'm not going to prioritize him. I know that I have so many holes on my roster. The thing about the Mets is that we know that they need to add so much this offseason and subtract so much this offseason, where the team is so goddamn top heavy. Whether it is you're getting 2 players long term from Shohei Ohtani, it still just does not seem like enough. It's just going to add to a more top heavy roster. I don't think it's the direction that the Mets need to go in. They're going to be a part of it. We saw what happened with Correa. I think that the Mets do have a chance to get Ohtani. I definitely think that there's a possibility. I don't think he's guaranteed to go to the Dodgers. I think the Giants may be a possibility. I think the Red Sox might actually be a possibility. That hasn't been talked about a lot. To be honest, I would not be surprised if the Angels just overpay and give him what he wants. It's going to be really weird how he does market himself, because in 2024, he's just a DH, right? And you're not going to be paying a DH that much. The Mets, I believe, are going to be in the middle of it. But at the end of the day, I don't think they're going to try as hard, or if they do end up with him, it's going to be at a last-minute thing, just like it happened with Carlos Correa. Let's hope that we don't have any concerns with his physical when that does happen. I think that there's another star in the next free agency that they probably need to pivot to. It makes a little bit more sense with that, especially with the timeline of the Mets outfield. I'm not going to full-on guarantee that Shohei Ohtani is going to be in a Mets uniform next year. Do I think there's a possibility? Sure. There's definitely a possibility with Steve Cohen's wallet, 100%. I'm not prioritizing it. I'm not expecting it. I think that Yoshi Yamamoto should be even more of a priority overall. Explore obviously the corner outfield market as well with guys who can hit for power. There's tons of corner outfielders that have power on that free agent market. You have to end up with one or two of them. Whether it is a guy that you're taking a flyer on or a guy who has had really good seasons recently. You know, Soler is out there who's possibly going to opt out. Jock Peterson I talked about. Teoscar Hernandez is available. Even some other flyer guy, you know, Joey Gallo's available. Cody Bellinger is available. There's tons of corner guys. I mean, yeah, even I'm not really a big fan of it because he's a little too old. In Adam Duvall, he's available too, right? So there's so many different, there's just so many pieces of quantity of guys who can do things that can help you win ball games to make the lineup deeper. And I just don't think Shohei Ohtani being the number one piece and then everything else being it. I'm just trying not to have another Billy Epler offseason where you start off getting 2 or 3 studs or whatever, and then, whoop, Tommy Pham, let's move on. Like, that's it. You know, I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to finish the goddamn job. I'm trying to keep it as balanced as possible and try to make as deep of a roster of 26 guys who actually could, at any time, be on the field for a winning baseball team. I'm tired of playing 26 to 26. They need more depth on this team. I love Shohei Ohtani. I think the guy is a ridiculous talent. But again, it's just not one of my priorities. That brings us to the last question here. And I know we're spending a lot of time on this. With all the hassle here, with all of the uncertainty, is it just more safe? Maybe you just wait for Juan Soto to hit free agency.
Who says you have to wait for it?
He's going to free agency anyway.
Yes. Yeah, again.
That's the thing. Yeah. Like, I don't care about, let's trade for him. He's a Boris client. He's going to free agency. That's the thing about with people that talk about trading for Soto. Okay. He's going to free agency. He's not signing an extension with you.
Here we go. But then this is the Frank about let Frank on.
I'm always in favor of a trade, especially when it comes to the Mets. I think that you give it a year and see what happens. If he doesn't play well in New York, why would I want to give this guy 13 years? If I already know year one, he's not that guy. I mean, there's so many things that could happen. I think, like I always say, it gives you the advantage in free agency because the guy already knows what you have to offer. If he likes being a Met, you have a better chance of signing him than you're a total unknown when you're in that free agency. The Dodgers did it with Mookie, and it worked. Like, I always am in favor. The Mets did it with Lindor. I'm always in favor of the trial year to see how it works for everybody. Does Soto like it? Do the Mets like it? And then you get the chance. And it's an extra year at that age that you make your team really good.
It's possible. The thing of how I'm looking at it is, let's not forget when Juan Soto, with the current team that he was with in Washington, him rejecting a 15-year extension worth $440 million. Like, that's where you're kind of measuring in his market as well. He kind of screwed himself in one way, but like, I don't want to play that type of game with a Boris client.
That I also am not in a rush to be a National for 15 years. I mean, that's the other thing to consider is that the Nationals, nothing against them, but they don't have too much to offer.
It doesn't look like the Padres went in any direction with him either. That's the thing.
No, but what I'm saying is that if you're Juan Soto and you said it was 15 at 450, that was the number. I mean, when you look at that AAV, like he's worth more.
Yeah, of course.
You know, he is worth more. And I would be willing to go like 13 and 475 or something like that, for example. Instead, again, I'd go higher AAV, less years. And then ultimately it comes down to money. So it's like if he ends up with more money per se, then why would he not want that? You know, so I think he's worth more than 450, but it would be such a rare instance to give anybody a 15-year contract. I mean, we always talk about 13 push to get 15 is just crazy, especially now that he's a couple years older than the initial 15 from the Nationals. So there's just a lot of factors that are involved there.
Thank you for bringing that up because I was going to bring that up before we went to this new segment. Both of these guys are picking a good year to be free agents because who the hell thought Xander Bogaerts was getting 13? Trey got 13. Teams, for some reason, last year, if this is a start, that teams aren't giving a shit about years again, and we're going back to like the mid-2000s, that's going to be a problem. And you're not going to get that. Well, the Mets, what they did, the high AAV. If this is the way, if we're going back to that, Neanderthal, we're going back.
That's the thing. You're not going to be able to
15?
commit to
Yeah.
anyone. If the Mets are going to say like, okay, we're only doing short-term deals here. We're only doing our Max
not getting
Scherzer
anybody.
contracts,
Yeah,
and our
you're not
going
getting
to get anyone. That's what I mean. You have to give the money to someone. It's like, okay, the Mets balked on the 12-year deal with Correa. Let's say they balk on a 10-year deal with Shohei. You're not going to give 12 years to Juan Soto. Like, you're just going to continue every single time, and you're going to end up with the Tommy Pham free agents. So if that's going to be the long-term deals that you get, I mean, you got to give it to someone if you want a full-on star here. Now, listen, we got Lindor here for the next 10 years. At one point, if you're going to be that big market team, if you're going to be in contention for one of these big fish free agents and you're not going to get any of them, because you're not willing to go more than 10 years or something, at one point, like, what are you doing there? You're just pretty much just wasting your time. I don't know. I think that Juan Soto is probably a safer option than Shohei Ohtani, obviously, just with his age. I wouldn't say he's only going to get better, but he's going to stay at this elite level of play for a long time. And Shohei, you don't know what he's going to be doing on the mound because he's not going to pitch for a year. Either way, I mean, it's an intriguing way to look at it because both of these guys coming in these next 2 years, these next two free agencies, we'll see how the Mets approach it. But I mean, whether they go after Ohtani, whether they go after Soto, whether they try to trade for Soto, whether, they try to trade for fucking Corbin Burns, who knows what they try to do this offseason. But at one point, you're going to have to pay someone long-term if you want to keep stars here and want to bring stars here.
We saw these short-term big AV. They've only done it with pitchers. Like, let's, again, 40-year-old pitchers. Brandon Nimmo got fucking 7 years. 36-year-old Starling Marte got 4 years. It's just, again, picking the right guys for that. Because you've seen, you put one of those big-ass, fat, big AVs to a bomb, yes. But they've also showed they're willing to go. Again, do we think 2 years ago Brandon Nimmo gets 8 years? 2 years ago? No, they went to that and got to that market. Starling Marte at age 35 getting 4 years?
33?
You would have thought 30. Well, I keep thinking Marte's older than he is. So, okay.
You always round
30.
up. You're just weird.
I'm rounding up, bro. I'm just getting rid of old guys. Get rid of these old guys. They've been willing to go to that term length. Obviously, we got Correa as the question mark. That wasn't, that was just physical. They didn't trust it compared to, they wanted the player. It's Cohen wanted him. But then other things came in control that said no. So, I don't think they're scared of term, which is scary because, again, if Cohen decides, fuck it, because, again, we said we didn't think Correa was going to be a Met, and then, he just drinks a bottle of wine, calls Boris up in Bora Bora, and then Correa's a Met. So there's a world where Cohen can just get on a phone call with Boris and, hey, this year it's Ohtani, and then next year it's Soto. There's a world that happens. Is it a high chance that world we're living in? No. But who knows? Because we don't know what this guy is. We know what, he's gone nuts. But again, he's opportunistic, and we've seen those before. So, waiting for Soto, signing Ohtani, this isn't basketball. One dude's not changing your team. You still need to dress 25 other guys.
More than that, with all the injuries you have, I mean, you're going to use way more than the 26, 25 guys. Like, you need more than that. It's such a tough sport. That 162, with the kind of injuries you have right now, with not a lot of depth that the Mets team has right now, like, you need so many pieces.
So speaking of roster construction, that's actually a really good segue right there. After a very unsuccessful 2023 season, the Mets have a lot of work to do this offseason, and it starts with the internal decisions. The Mets will have a whopping 16 players eligible for arbitration, with ARB 3 being headlined by Mets slugger Pete Alonso as his free agency approaches, with others including Daniel Vogelbach, Joey Lucchesi, Drew Smith, Eliezer Hernandez, and Trevor Gott. ARB 2 includes Luis Guillorme, Tim LeCastro, Michael Perez, Brooks Raley, John Curtis, Jeff Brigham, and Sam Coonrod. ARB 1 includes Rafael Ortega, DJ Stewart, David Peterson, and Danny Mendick. Due to the Mets' questionable roster construction in the past, David Stern's first tasks are expected to really plot the next direction of the organization, as the Mets' new president of baseball operations has been backed by ownership with his desire to choose his own staff and players. So of these players, these 16 players, Who would you guys consider keeping? Who would you consider taking out? There's some that are more self-explanatory than others. I do want to add that Daniel Vogelbach, John Curtis, and Trevor Gott were all under Stearns with the Brewers, and he did non-tender them while he was with them. Maybe it's a possibility that he does do that again, but out of this entire list, because there's 16 of them, so you can pretty much draw a hand.
Obviously, there are some names that I want to shoot with a bazooka, starting with that waste of fat name is Daniel Vogelbach. Close behind Drew Smith, just enough. And the fact that he's probably getting a raise from $2.3 million, pushing what Trevor got, over Trevor got number, both those guys can go too. My deal is, again, obviously you want to bring in depth, and you can say, oh, just bomb all these guys. I'm okay keeping guys with minor league options, and then, again, letting Stearns bring in his own version of depth, because, again, you can never have enough. If you're, you look at Lucchese's an obvious pickup. Obviously, the polar bear, freaking pretty obvious. You got to pick between one of Guillorme or Mendick. One. The other one gets the fuck out of here. I prefer Mendick, but, who cares? Again, minor league option, have him sit in Syracuse.
Oh, boy, what a debate that is.
What a debate that would have been. Rafael Ortega, I think you can find better. DJ Stewart, obviously, a quick just $1.5 million. And again, if you can keep him in AAA, keep him in AAA, or have him battle for the fourth outfielder job. Tim LeCastro, again, has minor league options. I don't care. I love, he's a good meme, but it's $1 million. If you want to cut somebody else, find someone better, do it. Or have him sit in Syracuse, fine.
Not even worth $50K.
It's Michael Perez, who cares? Eliezer Hernandez, sure. Again, he was injured all of last year, but again, pitching depth. Again, if he's the 15th or 20th pitcher on the roster of the 40 men, okay. Who else? Curtis and Brigham. I think Brigham has minor league options and Coonrod has minor league options. So again, keeping them in Syracuse just to have. Again, if they're depth, they're not a guaranteed spot, and battling like this year. Oh, we need all these optionable relievers, Billy. Yeah, you couldn't have gotten actual good relievers. It's just we got to have ability for up and down. Yeah, that worked out great.
The first priority is goodbye, Drew Smith. Please. I mean, that has got to be just like the overall offseason. That's be one of the top priorities. I just can't take the pain anymore. If he hadn't been here for so long and just caused so many losses, it wouldn't bother me so much, but it's just been too long. He's a bad habit.
The fact that he's projected to get $2.3 million, he's not even worth half of that. That's the crazy.
He's not worth any of it. I don't care. I don't care if it was minimum salary. I just can't take it anymore. It's just too much pain. Once someone puts you through that kind of pain, you just can't see their face anymore. You know what I mean? He's just I can't say what he's like, but because it's not PG friendly, but I don't want him on the Mets next year. I'll just leave it at that for him. Obviously, Vogelbach, my feelings. No, thank you. I mean, enough is enough. We know you don't provide a lot of different things to the table. Just a lot of beef and nothing else. No water, nothing else. And then as far as you mentioned with Stearns having those ties with some of those other players and him non-tendering them, you could also make the argument he acquired them. So it's there was something that he liked about him, but then he didn't like him. So it could go either way. I mean, I don't put too much stock into it, but it's at least worth considering. But for me, DJ Stewart is the obvious, has to stay. Absolutely deserves a chance next year. Joey Lucchese definitely deserves a chance next year. Generally speaking, I do try to keep some of the pitchers other than Drew Smith and, Eliezer Hernandez, probably not. Guillorme, absolutely not. I am so done with Luis Guillorme. I just think that his glove, it's good. Don't get me wrong, but I think that when you have a Lindor, Guillorme he just doesn't belong here. I mean, the offense was never great. It's gotten even worse. So I think that it's just enough, right? He's been here for another guy just been for too long. We've talked so much about shaking it up, trying something new. These guys have been here for so long, not being productive. They gotta go. So Guillorme has to go. I'd get rid of Mendick too, because again, it's why settle for not even mediocrity? I mean, these guys are below average at the plate, far below average at the plate. You can't have that in a sport where there's injuries, where double headers, guys need to start. Danny Mendick and Luis Guillorme cannot be making starts. They are not going to give you anything offensively. They're never going to be able to fill in for any of your starters. So they all got to go. I mean, Tim LeCastro, no. I mean, most of them I don't want back. I mean, it's very few guys. Like if Peterson's in there, sure, I'll bring him back. McGill, like a lot of the pitchers, I'll bring back because you always need a lot of pitchers. And some of these guys have a little bit of potential that can kind of do good things for you, like Luke Casey. I still give John Curtis another try. I still think he could do more than we've seen a lot of other relievers. Not saying much. I give him a try. Brigham, I don't know. I mean, unless you have a whole new staff, maybe, but I just don't think that Hefner and I don't know if unless Stearns could bring the Milwaukee pitching lab, I don't think they could fix him. I mean, that's just the point it's gone to. Coonrod, I mean, he looks so good in spring training, depending on what the offer is. If you give him some minor league options, sure, I'd bring him back. But other than that, most of the other guys, Michael Perez, absolutely not. Like, most of the guys have to go, honestly. I mean, this team was just so poor last year. And a lot of these guys, they're just not, to me, major league caliber players. I just don't feel that way about a lot of these guys. So most of them I get rid of. I would keep DJ Stewart and a few of the pitchers. That's the way I see it.
Drew Smith can fuck off. Daniel Vogelbach can fuck off. Trevor Gott, I feel like they're going to probably end up bringing him back, but Eliezer Hernandez, I never thought he was good in general. Tim LeCastro, I don't even know why they brought this guy in anyway. Luis Guillorme, it's time to move on. Joey Lucchesi, I definitely bring back, obviously. Just, a lefty that has been somewhat trustworthy this year. Coonrod, Brigham, Curtis, all of them, I am not really opposed to bringing them back, but I'm also not opposed to keeping them. I really don't care. Michael Perez, who gives a shit? David Peterson, you already know I've been ready to cut ties with this guy for 2 years now, but obviously they're probably going to end up bringing him back, even though I don't think he's worth the $2 million that he's projected to get. Danny Mendick, fuck off. Rafael Ortega can fuck off. And then DJ Stewart, I would 100% bring back. Probably the most years of control out of everybody that we have available for arbitration, so I definitely would take advantage of that. If it's $1.5 million that you were originally paying Daniel Vogelbach, I would definitely give that to DJ Stewart. There's also a part of me that just says I'm fully committed to Stearns bringing in his own guys. We keep Alonso, you keep DJ Stewart, the rest of them, bye. Just completely clean house. Move on from some of these guys who've been in the organization for so long. Drew Smith, obviously, we're ready to get rid of anyway. David Peterson, move on from him. I mean, there's tons of guys here that it's just like, let's start fresh. This team didn't work. They won 75 games. They sucked. Most of these guys are in their mid-30s. They're slow. They're old. Let's move on. Let's bring in some of the youth. But obviously, you're going to have a lot of roster construction for that. At the end of the day, I'm not really against bringing back any of these guys besides Vogelbach and Drew Smith. Like, those are the only guys that I'm like, you cannot be here next year, and I will probably jump off a bridge if you are. Like, that's probably the current state that I'm in. And, Guillorme, I also would let go of. He's close to free agency anyway, but, it's just the fact that Guillorme has been here for more than 4 years. It's actually crazy to think of it because he was in and out of the minors for so long. But it's 16 guys that you're going to have to make a lot of decisions on. And, that's more than half of your roster. So at one point, you're going to have to see, what they can provide you. I feel like some of the values that are projected for some of these guys, some of them are overpaid for what they actually provide on the field, especially for what you saw from a 75-win team.
For Vogelbach, since Epler is gone, I feel like that definitely increases the chances of Vogelbach not coming back after the story that we talked about last week with Epler basically forcing a Vogelbach to still be on this team despite the rebuild and despite the struggles. So there really should be no debate there. There should be no allegiance to him. That should be a pretty easy.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Stearns has a connection with Vogelbach, but
especially DJ Stewart, he could just provide so much more for you. The fact that he can make outfield starts,
he did his job. He did Daniel Vogelbach's job.
Exactly. So for a bench and utility and versatility perspective, as far as value on a roster spot, like we talked about, since Vogelbach literally cannot do a single other thing, there's just absolutely 0 point. Literally.
Yeah, I mean, he's younger than Vogelbach. He plays more positions than Vogelbach. Everybody plays more. I play more positions than Vogelbach.
He plays 8 positions.
I play more positions than Vogelbach.
How about that? That alone, 8 positions.
I mean, makes sense to just going forward to go with DJ Stewart, no matter what over Daniel Vogelbach. There's no reason to have both of them here. It will depend on what the Mets see in the DH position. If they go externally, obviously, if they're going to put trust into Mark Vientos, if they're going to, keep DJ Stewart here in the organization. I just want to see the Mets cut a lot of this fat. And there's a lot of fat on this list of 16-year. So last week, it was announced that the Mets star shortstop Francisco Lindor underwent surgery to remove a bone spur in his right elbow. According to a person with direct knowledge of the situation, Lindor first felt the effect of the injury during spring training. His discomfort reportedly lingered throughout the year, but the 28-year-old shortstop did not want to make it public or stop playing. With noticeable effects to his defense this year, Lindor's average arm strength dipped to a career low 80 exact miles per hour, hovering around the bottom 20% in the league, but still accumulating 11.2 defensive run value at shortstop. Even with his elbow injury, Lindor still put up another great career season, slashing .254, .336, .470, and posting the fourth ever 30 home run, 30 stolen base season in franchise history. Lindor is expected to make a full recovery over the offseason and will be ready for 2024 spring training in Port St. Lucie, Florida.
I mean, to have the season he still had offensively with a pulled pork elbow, I mean, hell, it shows, again, some dog in him, and especially what we've seen in the playoffs. You need some dogs, and if this is my highest paid offensive player, and he's not going to cry because of his elbow, and like I said, he didn't want to make this public. We learned about it in the offseason. It just shows, again, how good of an offensive year. Like we said, imagine if his elbow wasn't barking. The defensive metrics may have fallen off, but we don't care about defense. We care about hitting nukes. You get the 30-30 season. Again, the offense was still great. The defense was still, for the most part, solid. He had a few throwing errors, but now we know why that potentially happened. But overall, the season he had, and just, again, a lot more respect, and maybe this is kind of the thing to get him, maybe the fan base off his back for the rare people that hate him for some reason. They're like, hey, this dude doesn't care. Like, you paid him the big bucks. There are guys who, once they get the money, like, all right, just cruise control. Oh, I got a bad hammy. Oh, I got to take a couple of days off. This dude comes out and posts every day. Again, he does that weird incident in LA where he got his fucking finger jammed. But besides that, he has been playing every single available game and doesn't want to come out the lineup. And he's been productive. And that's the kind of guy. If this is the kind of guy, like, again, I'm not saying he's Harper tendencies, but if I'm paying a guy, I want a guy that's playing every day, who I could trust to play every day, is not going to make excuses, because I hate that shit. We've seen it with Taiwan Walker. We've seen it with lower-end players. My franchise player is playing through injuries. We saw Pete Alonso do it, but Pete's production tanked from it. Where Lindor has this, we didn't know anything, and he was still producing at a high level. So the respect level for Lindor is already higher than it already was, and he does have that dog in him.
I mean, like we said, it makes the good season that he had all the more impressive. The big thing to me is the fact that he still got the 160 games this year. That's the big thing to me. I mean, you could talk about the 30-30 and all that, but he played 161 last year. He had like Andrew said, the incident in Los Angeles. Played 160 this year. So there was never even like a 2-week stretch where he ever got to rest the elbow. Other than the All-Star break, I mean, he was still out there every single day. Still batted from both sides. It was like, because my elbow, I don't have to bat left-handed. There was nothing like that. So the fact that he still was even to play the field, even though his arm wasn't nearly as strong, the fact that he was able to do it for the 160, I think all that is just very impressive and good for him. That's what a leader should do. With the contract that he's getting, the guy is technically supposed to be a leader because of his experience and his contract. So all good things. I think that luckily it's not a huge injury as far as the bone spur. Not ideal, obviously, but it's nothing absolutely massive where it should be pretty good recovery. I don't really have any concerns going into next season following the procedure. So, props to him.
At this point, I mean, all I can really say and ask to any Met fan out there is how can you hate this guy at this point? Like, how can you hate Francisco Lindor at this point? I understand, like, maybe the batting average is a little too low for the substandard of a typical 70-year-old baseball fan. But when you look at it, I mean, this is the guy that you paid to be your main guy, one of the faces of the franchise. Andrew just touched on it. I really do hate when guys play through injuries. I really do. But they hold themselves responsible for anything that they do on the field when they do that. And that's what Francisco Lindor did throughout the entire season. 160 games that he played where he held himself accountable. He didn't make any excuses. He did not shift the blame to anybody when he was playing like shit. He said, I have to be better, and he was better. Did he have the tough stretches? Of course. But overall, I don't really think, like, we all know that like the UCL doesn't really affect the hitting as much. But for me, you still, in my opinion, you still need to get the surgery, still need to get that restructured, obviously. He's a shortstop, different situation. I feel like if he was not 28 years old, this would be a different story. If he was 35 years old, he probably would not be playing 160 games throughout this. But he probably would not be playing 160 games if he was 35 years old like Marte and everything. But, I mean, it was incredible. It was impressive. This team, not to mention, there was tons of scenarios where Lindor could have just sat out plenty of times this season because the team was pretty much going nowhere. But he got out there, he set off an example, and it really shows, in my opinion, where, you know, you have like the work ethic of a few people in this clubhouse of how just overall, how top heavy this roster is. Once again, just showing how many times you see some guys that care and then it just fully falls down to guys who don't give a shit and just stink. And I also will bring it up with the work ethic topic. Tommy Pham was right about Francisco Lindor. Let's be real for a second. I mean, whether you believe him or not, whether you think he's an asshole or whatever, whether you don't like how straightforward he is, I'm pretty sure he nailed it with Francisco Lindor, who apparently had this elbow injury throughout the entire goddamn season. I mean, huge respect for Francisco Lindor. I hate when guys play through injuries, but he still held himself accountable and he still put himself in a leader position, and that's really what you want to see from your $341 million player. I think there's some Mets fans out there that do owe Lindor an apology overall, in my opinion, because I feel like he is the guy that you want to model a lot of your players after, and he is that guy that you want to have out there. Is he a frustrating player? Sure. But overall, you get like one of these big 6-win seasons, a great all-around player from someone who pretty much shredded his elbow from day one. How can you argue with that, of this guy just wanting the money and basically coasting throughout the season? I feel like this should really change the perspective on Francisco Lindor a lot more as compared to how it was from the beginning. We've discussed Ohtani's elbow. We have discussed Lindor's elbow. But now there's one more elbow we need to discuss. A few weeks ago, Mets utility player Jeff McNeil was diagnosed with a partially torn UCL in his left elbow. When asked about the injury, McNeil said that he's been grinding through it basically all year. I've always had something going on there. It's tough to have it end this way, but hopefully no other problems, and we get ready for next year. Following his batting title season in 2022, McNeil struggled this year, only posting a .711 OPS across 585 plate appearances with a 2.6 Fangraphs wins above replacement. The Mets announced that McNeil will not undergo surgery during the offseason, and he's expected to be ready to go for 2024 spring training. McNeil will be entering a 32-year-old season in the second year of a 4-year extension worth over $50 million, which he signed last offseason, buying out the last 2 years of arbitration.
I don't understand why he's not just getting the surgery done and just being fucking done with it. But again, this guy is about the same. He might have less brain cells than I do, and I have like 3.25. I'm still saying it. Call him Logan Gilbert for McNeil 1-for-1. Please, just get him the fuck out of here. Please, just get him out of here. If his only value is versatility, which everyone saying, oh, he's so versatile, which is nice. Again, it's nice having a utility guy, but then a utility guy who hits 12 homers a year. But McNeil, if he's not hitting for the batting average that what he is, and again, he's less valuable in the corner outfielders because you need a power prolific player in the corner. Yes, he can play it defensively, and that's fine. You paid the guy. This is the guy you paid, and if this is more every other year, this is worse than Michael Conforto at this point. And, you know, some certain co-host was on Conforto's ass all Mets career about him being flippity-floppity, but then a certain gerbil has that same kind of, I'm going to have a great year and be an all-star and then win a batting title and then have like a 100 WRC plus and just be a mediocre player. I don't know why the surgery's just not done. Just get it done and then come. If you got to miss the first month of the season, fine. Like, you're 38. Like, you're old. Stop. Okay, was he 29? How old's McNeil? No, he's 31. How old's McNeil?
He's gonna be 32.
He's gonna be 32. So you're halfway to death, and you're still acting like a child. Just get it done. Be a big boy.
Halfway to death, man.
You're hurting the team more than helping it. Oh, just because, again, you're not Shohei Ohtani. You're not moving the needle, bud. The Mets can do without you for a few days. And hell, if that means more Ronnie Mauricio in the lineup, hell, that helps the Mets more than you think. Besides the point. It doesn't make sense to just push back the inevitable, because who knows? He doesn't get the surgery. He's resting it. And then who knows, the first play of spring training, he tries to feel a ground ball, he throws it to first base, and now you're done for the full year. Instead of being intelligent and just getting it done, it is a ticking time bomb. And if that happens, it's on him. So again, I don't understand. Just get it done. I'm afraid to get cut open too. But I'm 22. I'm not 32. I still eat Dino Nuggets. There's a difference.
I get, like, it probably doesn't affect his hitting, but like the fact that you saw him not hit well this year, and the fact that you also know he's a limited bat in this era of baseball, it's like, why would you actually take that risk for him offensively?
I really think that he should get the surgery. I mean, I think, we talk about Lindor's leadership, and granted, obviously not the same exact injury, but still the same premise of, get 100%. I mean, we talk about all the time, like, if you wanted to, not get the surgery or sit out anytime this year because you didn't want to, like, miss games for the team, well, now's the time to do it. I mean, especially since your team got bounced early. I mean, you got a month extra than some of the other teams to rest. So, like, if there's ever a time to get the surgery, it's now, where you have a few months to recover. You don't miss any games compared to if you're worried about missing games during the regular season. And like Andrew said, even if you miss a month, I would rather have, if it means that I can get closer to 2022 McNeil if he misses the first month compared to having him the whole year and I get closer to 2023 McNeil, I'll make that trade-off. I mean, like, it was such a, I mean, it's a total, like we said, it's such a totally different player. I mean, and it feels like the years that he doesn't play well, there's something. He had the hamstring the whole year of 21 that was never fully right because they made him play through it. He came back from the injury list too early, all that stuff. And then now you have this. I mean, you can't constantly have those nagging things, especially, again, if you're above 30. Do the right thing. Be 100%. Get rid of your excuses. You know what I mean? Because it's like I said, this year to me is make or break. I cannot do another bad year. There's I don't like good year, bad year. I mean, like I said, I did it with Conforto. Now, if McNeil's going to do the same thing, you got to go. So that's what I'm saying. This is make or break. Get the surgery. Be 100% and show that you're worth it and that you should be on this team. You should be starting over Ronnie Mauricio. So, I'm fully for that. He should have gotten it done. They didn't, I don't know if they gave an exact timetable of exactly how much time he would miss, but even then, I think it's worth it. If it contributes to his performance in any way, you should get the surgery. I mean, that is the way I feel about it, because what's weird to me about McNeil is that his second half was better than the first half. So I don't know if he maybe got adjusted to the pain, was able to do something differently, so it didn't bother him as much. I don't know what happened. I don't know if the games didn't matter. There's going to be a bunch of different things that happen. So for me, that's why I'm just saying, get it done, be 100% like Lindor is, and let's worry about next year, because why risk it any more than you already have?
I think it was definitely obvious, just coming from like the injury. It was obvious because we saw that overall McNeil really struggled with the like high and inside pitches, just turning on any pitches in general. I mean, we saw this guy flying open, going to left field so much, and he's at his best when he's pulling line drives, and he just was not doing that consistently at all this season. So there definitely was something that was bothering him. But overall, I mean, I'm at my wit's end here. I try so hard to be nice. No, I don't. But I've gone to a point where I'm so frustrated with McNeil that, like, at one point, I don't even care what goes on with this guy anymore. Like, he becomes to some sort of level where I'm like, okay, well, that's McNeil for you. Like, that's it. Like, that's all you're going to get. But the fact is that every guy on this team has to be at their best and at their 100% best with how top heavy the roster is. You need your top guys to perform. One of those guys that makes it top heavy, whether he is falling off or not, it is Jeff McNeil. Jeff McNeil is one of their main bats. He's not the main bat, but he is one of their main bats. So we needed to see him perform in order for the offense to be consistent. And even though I don't think he fits well into a winning formula offense anymore, he is here for the next 3 years. Would I definitely explore possibly shopping him around? Sure. Is that contract movable? Absolutely. I feel like there's just more younger replacements. There's more younger possibilities that can step in right now to McNeil if he needs to be on the injured list. Get the fucking surgery. Just get the damn surgery. I don't care if it affects your hitting. I know it doesn't affect his throwing arm. Blah, blah, blah. You're 32 years old. You're 32 years old. This is my problem with this. I understand. It doesn't affect this. It doesn't affect that. He can play through this injury, whatever. It doesn't affect him, whatever. But the wear and tear of a 162-game season, it's only going to get worse from there. Frank has talked about this all the time. You get to the side of 30, it's only going to get worse. If you're banged up along with being past 30, it's only going to get worse from there. So he is on the better side of 30 as of right now. Just get the surgery. I don't need to see any hero ball from Jeff McNeil, okay? Because mainly, I don't need this guy in my lineup to win, to be honest. I'm going to tell you right now. I think he's the most replaceable guy on the roster. Different conversation. But overall, it's just irresponsible to play through injuries. And then also, I don't want to hear the excuse afterwards. I just don't want to hear it. As for Francisco Lindor, with him, we didn't hear about this throughout the entire season. We didn't know what was going on. And then he got the fucking surgery that he needed. Just stop being an idiot. Like, I just feel like some of these players need to have, like, their heads screwed on straight. And I just feel like some of the decision making, I'm looking at it from an outside perspective, but obviously it just does not look like the smart thing to do as an everyday baseball player playing 162 games throughout the season. So let's get into our fun little game for this week, which is the lineup card. We have done this before. We have 9 different topics for the 9 players that you put in a batting order, and they're all Mets related. Some of them are all-time Mets related. Some of them are stupid. Some of them are current Mets related, and we'll obviously go back and forth of picking those topics. Go alphabetically this time. So, Andrew, the board is yours, 1 through 9. Go ahead.
Let's go with number 8 because that's the number of the greatest quarterback of all time.
Number 8, the 2023 Mets least valuable player, LVP.
For 23, this past season, the least valuable Met, Josh Walker.
Okay, is that because of the balk-off?
Because I was literally watching the game at the stadium. Yeah, so Josh Walker.
Yeah, I mean, I think of all the big losses that the Mets had, the Philadelphia one with Brigham, that was a big game. That he just totally fell apart. And even there was a game against Colorado where they blew a big lead, and Brigham was right in the middle of that one, and when the Mets were still at least in it. So for me, it just felt like they were far often more times than not where he just wasn't bringing value to the Mets. Like, he has like some stuff, but he doesn't know what to do with it. So all in all, the value wasn't there because he just ended up doing more harm than good way too often.
I'm going to throw 2 hats into the ring, and then obviously we'll move on to the next one. But obviously, you just didn't talk about value, providing value. This guy provided absolutely no value, being Daniel Vogelbach. Obviously, that's your LVP. But I feel like we have talked about him, again, so many goddamn times every single week, every single second of every single day. Another guy I want to put in there, obviously, is Carlos Carrasco, who was a disaster all goddamn year. The time that he spent on this roster, it was way too long than it was supposed to be, especially with some other young guys you probably could have given a chance after the trade deadline. Frank, it's your board.
I will take number 9. We'll say at the bottom half of the order.
The Mets' next extension candidate after Pete Alonso,
Francisco Alvarez. I mean, that to me, that's the guy I'm in a rush to do it. I think that you don't get an Alvarez often, and I think you really take advantage of that. Like I've said with Alonso, don't make the same mistake twice. If you have a guy young, you can get him for good AAV. Do it right now. So to me, I think he should be the number 1 candidate for extension. Since Alonso report's not going to happen, I really prioritize Alvarez. You saw the Braves do it. I say it every episode, but follow that blueprint. The deal they got on Acuna, Albies, legendary. I mean, do it. just sign Alvarez right now.
I think Senga needs an extension because obviously he's going to opt out after next year. So just add more term. Just add more term to that.
That's a good answer. That's what I was going to say. Like if he has another great year like he had, I'm definitely keeping this guy long term. I'm giving him another 3-4 year. I mean, like obviously he's in his 30s, but the contract that they gave him and what he's putting up here, he's definitely going to opt out. So just be ahead of it, in my opinion. And because this guy, so far, he's been the ace of the Mets staff. And I mean, it doesn't say much, but he has been just incredible. Back to you, Andrew.
Let's go with Yordan Alvarez up. I'll go with the 3 spot.
A 1-year contract that the Mets should consider this offseason.
Of course, I have to get this because I've been literally saying the guy who. I'm not saying he can be as good as Cody Bellinger because obviously he doesn't have the MVP, but a guy I would take the flyer on to play in that corner outfield is Tyler O'Neill. Speed, power, great defense on a 1-year deal. And if this team is not supposed to be competitive, a guy you could easily flip at the deadline and recoup some assets for a guy on a 1-year deal. That's been kind of, again, the card, again, and follow the blueprint. If he comes from St. Louis, get him because they let go of anybody with talent. So pick the guy up because they can't develop anybody, it seems like. But if you leave St. Louis, you get good just like when people leave the Mets. So Tyler O'Neill would be the guy that I've kind of had my eye on. Crazy speed, crazy power, strikes out a ton. But that 2021 season, like he was one of the best one of the best outfielders in the game. WAR, all that crap, 30-plus homers. Can give you potentially 30-30 season. So for me, Tyler O'Neill.
The 1 years are tough because you never know who's really going to go for it. So for me, I do think that the Mets, unfortunately, they're going to have to probably look in the corner outfield again, just because, again, with the uncertainties of Starling Marte, and you right now just have an opening in left field, in my opinion, because like we said, if DJ Stewart ends up becoming the DH, that covers DH spot. So you still have left field open. And if Marte is still recovering, you might need right field as well. So as far as, who's even willing to take a 1-year deal, that's a tough part. Like we've talked about, we love Hunter Renfroe. We love Jock Peterson. I mean, I want to see the Mets take someone of that ilk, one of these outfielders that have a really high power ceiling, because they just need some more power in this lineup. We talk about Alonso protection, secondary power sources. So I think any of those outfielders, if you could get any of them on a 1-year deal, just to get some kind of power in this lineup and cover an outfield spot, that should just be a top priority in general. So if you get for a 1-year deal, it would be perfect.
I mean, I would probably go to the pitching department with this because I think
it's hard to get a pitcher on a 1-year deal.
It is hard to get a pitcher on a
Unless
1-year
it's
deal.
reliever. I mean,
but I feel like
it is pretty tough.
with someone who's been injured recently, I mean, he is 34 years old. I talked about him at the deadline, actually. James Paxton, I would consider giving a 1-year deal to. He started off pretty good, and then he ended pretty tough. He only ended up pitching 96 innings. He's pitched like 120 innings in the last 3 years. Like he's been banged up recently, but I do think that can be a decent depth piece to your rotation. If he pitches well, move him at the deadline, possibly get something back for him if the team is not in the right direction. Obviously, we do have a lefty already in Jose Quintana, but I think that James Paxton would be a really good addition because I think that he's also had recently an uptick in velocity. The walks have come up a little bit recently. So, like, I think that it's someone that you can definitely, bring in here on a 1-year deal, prove it deal, and you could possibly move at the deadline. Again, this is like your 5-starter at best if you're going to look at it. 1 year, $12 million, like one of your Rick Porcello deals, but somebody who's actually talented in some sort. It has to be rotation depth and not feature rotation arms if you're going to go with that age of 34 years old.
Yeah, I'll stay near where Andrew's at. Give me 4.
The Mets' third base situation, how are you utilizing it for 2024?
Yeah, I mean, definitely not Vientos. I mean, like we talked about, he's just not a third baseman. I mean, I don't think it's even worth entertaining at this point. He's DH first base, so I wouldn't even really be putting him in the conversation. I am curious to see how the Matt Chapman negotiations go. I think if teams prioritize other players and Matt Chapman kind of falls by the wayside, get him a more of a short-term deal, I would really prioritize him for that third base position. But other than that, it really comes down to a spring training battle between Beatty and Mauricio. whoever has the better spring training, you're the third baseman. I mean, nothing's guaranteed to either guy right now. Like I said with Beatty, he hasn't earned it to me to be like, you know what, even though we thought you were supposed to be the future third base, you haven't shown it yet. So I'm not guaranteeing Brett Baty's third base. If Mauricio ends up having a better spring training again, I'm letting Ryan Mauricio be the starting third baseman. And again, I think Mauricio has more potential. I think he fits this lineup better because, like we talked about, with the kind of hitter Brett Baty is, if he's not a pull hitter, if he is, like we said, if he's like a McNeil or things like that, Mauricio fits this team better. I mean, he already has the advantage that he's a switch hitter, way more power. I think that he's probably the better fit. So we'll see what happens in spring training. But unless you get Matt Chapman on a reasonable deal, I'd be looking at Mauricio.
And Chapman is not going to be cheap because we look at the free agent market. It's Ohtani. There's nobody in that tier 2, and that is Matt Chapman. So he is not. He's going to get like a 7-year deal from somebody. Of course, would I be in the conversation? Yes, but Evan Longoria or someone to that ilk. You need to bring some. I'm not on the Jeimer Candelario train. I'm staying away from that. That's a little sus to me. But I am getting some sort of insurance for the kids. And again, it's narrative, ball, whatever. But everywhere Evan Longoria goes, stability in the locker room, and the team gets back into the playoffs. And he still hits left-handed pitching. So if it's Mauricio and Beatty, Longo can be brought in just as an insurance. And let's say again, one injury, but one of them gets down, full court, one of them now, who's the backup to those guys? So again, I'm looking in the Matt Chapman market. I'm looking at the potential trade market. I don't know who per se would be available yet. But again, if I am bringing in a vet of some sort to, yes, let Mauricio let Ventos try. We all know he's not going, but Brett, Ronnie battle. But I am bringing in some sort of insurance. If it's any type of vet, maybe it's trading for maybe former highly touted prospect who at third base who maybe got a chance. And again, you got to bring some more options. So again, Evan Longoria or vet, I would be all right with. Look at Matt Chapman, explore every option. But I still think, like Frank, it's going to be a battle between most likely Ronnie and Brett.
It's easy to rule out Mark Vientos just not being a third baseman. Overall, he's either going to be a DH or a first baseman. Beatty, I'm not feeling good about at all. Like, I don't think that he has earned it. I think the favorite right now is Ronnie Mauricio, especially with the strong possibility of Jeff McNeil being on the opening day roster and being at second base. There's a strong possibility, that he doesn't get the surgery and he's not on the IL or whatever. But overall, I obviously would look at Matt Chapman, but if he's looking for a long-term deal, no, I obviously would have given him like that extension and traded for him like a few years ago. Obviously, I talked about that instead of Eduardo Escobar. And this is the main reason why, with this third base position, of why you cannot plug prospects into your lineup. And that's something that I can't stress enough. I don't want to hear, we don't need Jorge Soler, we don't need Jock Peterson because we have Ryan Clifford. I don't want to hear we don't need this pitcher because we have Mike Vassell. I don't want to hear that type of thing, because Beatty did not stop the Mets from going after Carlos Correa. Alvarez didn't stop the Mets from going after and getting Omar Narvaez, right? Mauricio didn't stop the Mets from trading for Francisco Lindor. So overall, I mean, when you look at just any of the prospects that you can plug in there, I'm hoping that Ronnie takes away the job because I like his hitter profile better than Beatty. I'm not looking to spend big at this position. I'm just looking towards the outfield as for possible position players, but the third base position is definitely going to be something to look out for once again, because it seems like we've been doing this ever since number 5 retired. So it continues the tradition into another year.
Go one.
Okay, well, we did the LVP, but let's go to the MVP of the 2023 Mets.
Francisco Lindor, highest paid player, 30-30 season, great, highest WAR. So it goes to Francisco Lindor.
I still think it's Pete Alonso. I mean, I think you see it when Pete's not playing. If they pitch around Pete, you're not going to get it from many other sources. As far as when it comes to actually driving in the runs, Nimmo definitely had that uptick in the home runs late in the season, but most of the time he's an on-base guy. He can't bring himself in because he can't steal bases. Lindor, he did, so he can. Other than that, a lot of these other guys can't generate their own offense. So to me, I mean, P. Alonso, as we know, look at, I hate to with the old man stat, but RBIs. Like P. Alonso is just he just accounts for a lot of the runs that the Mets score, and a lot of big runs. And we talk about, he's not Lucas Duda. Like a lot of his home runs late in games for the win. Game changing. Like he gives them the lead. Like his hits are big hits. They're not the same team without him. We have talked about that a million times. So for me, still
obviously Lindor, Alonso, your top impact players. Senga, I got to put him in there because he was just so unfreaking believable, and he was just, it came into such a question mark, somebody coming from another country, and he just blew us out of the water. I mean, we know he's going to be top 5 Cy Young. He's going to be top 5 in Rookie of the Year. And, I'm excited for the future with this guy because, a team that loses Jacob deGrom, it's tough to find your next ace. And it looks like we may have just found another one. We got 2, 5, 6, and 7. Frank, it's yours.
I will take 2.
Favorite Mets prospect going into 2024?
Gilbert is definitely my guy that I'm looking at as far as who's not on the roster. Because again, since Alvarez is already here, he's my next guy because, like I've talked about since we've been doing this, in-house outfield options, young outfield options. I've talked about it a million times. When Nimmo did it, PCA got traded away, and it's like we talked about right now. You got to film these veterans. I'm so tired of it. I just want another outfielder who the Mets have for a long time. Now he's going to be homegrown. He's coming through the farm system. But for me, that's the guy I'm excited for. I can't wait till he gets here. Just having another nice power bat who's an outfielder, young. Like, I just can't wait. So for me, he's the guy I'm most excited for.
Yeah, I won't stick to the basic answers. I'll go Blade Tidwell just because he's got the highest profile of the pitching, if any, in the system. So do I think he's an ace? No, but I think he can be a really good number 2. Sure as hell. So again, that's probably it. Again, you could throw some other guys. Definitely just have Blade because he is the highest upside of any of the pitchers in the system for a team that desperately needs pitching.
Yeah, I mean, I would stay with pitching and also put in Brandon Sproat too. But we have not seen him pitch yet. So, but I'm really excited for him because I really like that pick that they made of him 2 years ago, and they did not get to sign him, but then they drafted him once again and signed him. So I'm actually really excited for him. Big arm coming out of Florida. It looks like he's most likely going to be a reliever, but we'll see if we can get some volume out of him throughout his development through the minor leagues. I'm excited for him because he could be in the majors in about 2 years if all goes well, because he is 23 already, I believe.
I'll go 5.
Number 5. Okay, well, this one's pretty easy. You got 2 former Mets in the American League Championship Series. Who are you rooting for, Scherzer or Verlander?
Well, again, as a wrestling fan, I love heels, and the Astros are the heels of Major League Baseball, and I love watching them win World Series because it pisses off Yankee fans. So I am riding with your daddy and the Astros. Justin Verlander, who gives a shit? Rafael Montero, I don't give a shit. It's always the Astros. Bang the trash cans and win another World Series because it pisses off Yankee fans.
Generally speaking, I am rooting for the Rangers just to see like someone different because we've seen the Astros do it plenty of times. But if I had to root between Verlander and Scherzer performance-wise, I do root for Verlander. I just think the way Scherzer acted the entire time, he was here longer, more excuses, more drama, the whole debacle at the deadline. Oh, well, someone needs to have a talk with me. Like, who are you? Like, honestly, as a Met, you don't have that power. You didn't do anything. Like, in your career, sure, great pitcher, but not, no, they need to talk with me. Stop. I mean, so between the two of them, I root Verlander, but the team itself, I always like to see the new team get in there. So I root for a young Texas team.
I mean, I probably want to see Texas win, but I also like seeing Jordan just hit bombs over and over and over again. I guess I would probably root for Verlander because I respect him a lot more after how Scherzer kind of just left it. I would love to see him give up 7 runs and mirror something that happened in Queens last year. That would be nice.
I will take 7.
Okay, 7. You actually just mentioned this guy, and I'm going to move him to a prediction now. Will Drew Gilbert make the 2024 opening day roster?
I don't think he'll be on the opening day roster. Again, it would have to be. I just don't see it, honestly. I can see the Mets really going the service time route. And if you see him, it wouldn't be till like really late in the season if they're kind of out of it or if he's just absolutely tearing it up. So prediction-wise, I'm going to say no. I think he's just – it's not so much that he's too young. It's more so he just hasn't had enough seasoning yet. I think they definitely need to get him to AAA before we can really entertain that conversation.
Not a chance. Not a chance in hell. I think I got a better chance of getting Haley Steinfeld than Gilbert making the opening day roster. Not a shot in hell. Maybe just like Jet, maybe a September call up, possible, but not opening day roster. Not a shot in hell. Unless this team is straight up like doesn't give a shit and tanking.
No, but even then, I feel like if that's the case, you'd rather have the service time if you're not trying to win.
I think it's a lot more possible than you guys think it is, because I'm going to tell you right now, AAA sucks. AAA is useless. It's the most useless level in all of major leagues. And if Drew Gilbert proves himself to be on this major league roster in spring training, I think that there's a strong possibility that you do see him on the opening day roster. I don't think he would work well as a fourth outfielder. He needs to play every day overall, of the caliber prospect that he is. But as for somebody who dominated AA baseball, I think that it's someone you definitely could look out for as a possibility on the major league roster. It all depends on what the Mets do in free agency, of course. We still don't know what's going to happen with Marte. We still, don't know what's going to happen with the left field position. But I think there's a strong possibility, but he's going to have to outperform a lot of guys in spring training. He is going to have to put on a freaking show. But we all know how stubborn the Mets can be. We'll see what direction they go on it, but I do like Drew Gilbert. Obviously, I'm not plugging him into the lineup, but if he plays his way on here, he plays his way on here. And, if he proves himself to be someone who should be on the major league roster, if Tim LeCastro can make your major league roster, anyone can make it at this point. The final one is number 6, the bigger MVP robbery, 06 Beltran or 07 Wright.
As much as obviously Beltran should obviously selfishly want him to win, you had Pujols and Howard actually put up godly numbers, where Jimmy Rollins' season was fine, but Wright had better. You could make the case Wright. Obviously, the voters wanted to go Rollins. The Phillies won the division. The Mets did, and the Mets lost. So I'll go Wright. Selfishly, should be Beltran, but again, you had Pujols and Howard to have just outstanding years.
Unfortunately, I do also have to go with David Wright. I mean, don't get me wrong, Beltran did have a tremendous 06. He did so much for the team. We talked about Lindor. Beltran did offensively, defensively, on the bases, big hits. I mean, he did it all for that team in 06. But Pujols did have an insane year that year. And obviously the Cardinals ended up winning the whole thing, as we all know. But I think that, like Andrew said, I think David Wright, you can make a case just as good as Rollins. I think that there's much tighter of an argument. And I think ultimately he was one that did.
MVP is a regular season award, right? So, I mean, we talk about that, and the Mets technically were a better team than that Cardinals team. So you can make that argument. The Cardinals won 83, 84 wins. I mean, they barely squeaked in, and they won it in 06. So, I mean, I think there's an argument for Beltran. There's an argument for Wright. But, overall, when you look at what Rollins did compared to David Wright individually, I know we talked about, what is this 40 stolen bases. David Wright also stole 38, I'm pretty sure. He also chested him up to him in base running as well. So I would go with David Wright, but I think that Beltran deserved a huge argument there. Did he finish? Beltran finished fourth? I have third. Yeah. Okay. I'll also throw in another MVP robbery for the Mets, and that would be 2018 Jacob deGrom. But because overall, if the team sucks, sure, but A-Rod won it with the team sucking, and Mike Trout has won it all these years.
It's so hard to see a pitcher win it nowadays.
Yeah, but it was a historic year. I mean, let's be real.
It
Didn't win the Triple Crown. Verlander did it, and he won Triple Crown. So if you don't win Triple Crown,
you didn't get wins.
Yeah.
You didn't get the win.
No Triple Crown, no win for you.
I hope you drown. So we get into the viewer questions. For those of you who want to submit a question for us to answer, make sure to click the link in the description, fill out our form with your name, your Mets-related question, and it could be featured on the next episode of the Mets Weekly Podcast. This one is from Mr. Mets Mistress. Jesus Christ. The concern level for Diaz returning next year.
Actually, not that much, because you really felt like if the Mets were in it, he could have pitched this year at some point in September. I'm glad they were smart and said don't rush it. So I think he was on track to pitch. I think that he's young enough, and I to me personally, this is my unprofessional medical opinion. I have less concerns with a pitcher coming back from a leg injury than I do with the arm injury. I think with the arm, weird things can always happen if it was like a shoulder or something like that. But with a knee, I feel like he should be okay, especially the way he was just rehabbing so quick the whole time. It just never seemed to fully affect him that much, where there was like a lot of setbacks in his recovery. So since there was nothing like that, I'm really not all too concerned going into next year for Diaz's health.
No, because again, like Frank said, it's his knee. Like his elbows, his arm is fine. So, and the fact that he was already throwing bullpens. Oh, the velocity was down. He only hit 94. I think the first bullpen out, he hit 94. But I got, again, the fact that he'd have a full year of full rest, no, like, oh, just have him come back in a useless game. He's got plenty of time. Doctors are great. So, like a 2% because it's the Mets, because he can like snap on a Lego and re-tear his whole tendon in the offseason. We wouldn't be shocked. So I feel nothing. I feel like the concern level for me is low, but again, with the Mets, you could never rule anything out.
Yeah, it took a while for Diaz to go to that perfection level of 2022 where he was just so goddamn dominant. I mean, we saw him at his worst. He saw him at his best. I'm not worried about the production of Edwin Diaz. I still, at this moment, I still think he's the best reliever in all of baseball. Relievers are finicky no matter what. So, adding this injury to it, we all know that he throws pretty hard. He's got to push off that back leg. So there's a strong possibility that it could be a concern, or maybe, but I think that he is younger than the usual reliever that would suffer this type of injury. Again, we were talking about Lindor, of that whole situation with his elbow, and, if he was 35, it'd be more of a concern. But I think that, what we've seen from Edwin Diaz, you obviously hope that he's the dominant reliever that he was. I'm not really concerned with the production that you get from him. I think he'll be just his dominant self, hoping that he still has the velocity. I hope that he still has that razor blade slider that he always has. Just overall, and I think everybody can agree, we freaking missed him this year. We needed him out of that bullpen, and he wasn't there. So here are your rapid fire stories for the week. While speaking at Sportico's Invest in Sports conference, Mets owner Steve Cohen revealed that he is currently interviewing candidates for the president of business operations position. The hedge fund billionaire continues to express that his goal is to get the Mets right and get the team model down. Mets pitching prospect Dominic Hamill won Eastern League Pitcher of the Month for September. The 24-year-old Hamill carried a stretch of 14 consecutive scoreless innings in September, followed by a 7.2 scoreless innings performance to help send the AA Binghamton Rumble Ponies to the Eastern League Championship. Mets catching prospect Ronald Hernandez has been named to the Florida Complex League All-Star team, posting an 875 OPS combined with the Mets and Marlins organization. Hernandez was acquired by the Mets at the trade deadline along with infield prospect Marco Vargas in exchange for reliever David Robertson at the deadline. The Mets were among 15 teams scouting Cuban right-handed pitcher Yariel Rodriguez. In 2023, Rodriguez posted a 1.15 earned run average out of the bullpen in Japan and had a dazzling performance for Team Cuba in the WBC. He's been scouted to have a high 90s fastball and a 2,900 RPM slider. Rodriguez is 26 years old and is free to sign with any MLB team of his choosing this offseason. Parting words for episode 29. Ike Davis, DJ Stewart wearing 29 now.
Eric Campbell
frickin' Campbell hit the ball hard, but right to the ground.
We're getting close to the offseason. That's kind of what we do. So just waiting to get to the offseason, enjoying other sports, but obviously waiting for the Mets to start making some moves and coming up with different video ideas. So that's some fucking bullshit, but move on.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting pretty close to the end as far as the actual baseball year is concerned, with the CS is starting, the championship series. Then you have the World Series. Then the offseason officially begins, and we can actually see some moves made. And, it's an exciting time of year to see what changes happen, not only for the Mets, but all throughout baseball. So we're just trying to, get ready for the, last road stop, the last pit stop before the actual offseason begins for everybody.
One at a time.
All I can say right now is, for every single thing that the Mets can do that's not transaction related, it hasn't been talked about yet whatsoever, but it needs to be brought up. They have to let go of Jeremy Hefner, okay? They have to let go of him, all right? I'm not going to go into full-on detail, but they need to move on, especially with Stearns being the pitching guy. He needs to bring in his own pitching coach. Another week of Mets baseball, Mets news. Episode 30 next week. Other than that, let's go Mets, and we'll see you guys next week. Peace out.